Empathy also must be operationalized. It has to be more than words. So what do policies say that allow for empathy? How do we train people in the call center to speak and engage with customers that imparts empathy?
I'm Carolyn Pars, communicator, coach, and host of Just Power, a podcast about creating a clean energy future without leaving anyone behind. Join me as we explore the technologies, policies, and human stories that can make clean energy not just sustainable for our planet, but accessible for everyone. Last year, U.S. utilities requested rate increases that were more than double what they did the year before. And it's not surprising because we are smack in the middle of the energy transition right now. So the question the series Leading Through Energy Affordability keeps asking is, what does credible responses to energy affordability actually look like? Hi, I'm Carolyn, and welcome to Just Power. Today, for the first time, we're not talking about utilities, we're talking with one. Utibe Bassey grew up in Lagos, Nigeria without reliable power, and today she is the Vice President of Customer Experience at Dominion Energy, Virginia's largest utility. But what I'm surprised and delighted most about is her personal framework that she calls love as a KPI. It's the idea that love, defined not so much as the feeling that we all feel, but as a measurable standard on how organizations leave people at every touch point. So I'm super excited to have her here and to dive in. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Glad to be here.
All right. So you grew up without reliable power, and now you lead the customer experience at a major U.S. utility.
Yep.
So when customers call Dominion today, struggling with their bills that they can't pay, does that personal history change how you hear that call?
It absolutely does. I think context is we all see the world through the eyes of our experiences. And I think my personal experience with power makes me really, really appreciate the work that we do at Dominion. So Lagos, where I grew up, is a remarkable city, incredible in many ways. Still to this day, there's a lot of people have to create their own power. And so I grew up seeing that. I grew up with like lanterns and all of these makeshift ways and generators and all these things. And so to work for a utility who has such an excellent commitment and track record on the topic of reliability, for me, is an honor. And it really helps me understand the customer experience from a different perspective than if I didn't have that background.
Yeah. What a juxtapose that must be for you, right? So energy affordability, we're talking about that today, right? It's the number one issue that we hear customers are talking about. And I'm sure that's happening in Virginia as well. And so often utilities may respond, we're below national average, or they may go into rate comparisons, but that doesn't always land with the customer, right? What does land with customers from your perspective these days around it?
So different stats and different messages, as you said, very well said, Carolyn, resonate with different audiences. I think for some, that context is helpful, but what more customers want more than anything is to know what it means for them. Customers want to know that you hear them. Customers want to know that you understand where they're coming from, what they're going through, the implications of things. Customers want to feel heard, honestly, in the same way everyone wants to feel heard. Everyone wants to feel understood. And so what does resonate with customers is a reflection, first and foremost, even before an explanation of first and foremost of empathy. Of we hear you, we understand, and at Dominion we do. We know that prices of everything's going up, fuel prices are going up, groceries, and we know that we provide an essential service. Just that act of acknowledgement goes a very long way, Carolyn, as it does in our personal lives. Anyone that imagine like making an argument and someone just starting with like a statistic, right? No, they heard and understood.
I've known people like that, just so you know.
I'm right 50% of the time. No, people just feel heard, and so we start
being heard and being listened to, right?
100%.
Right, and you said empathy. Like, how does that show up, right, in your work? Because you're heading up customer experience.
It shows a great question. It shows up in multiple levels. It shows up first and foremost as like it has to be as a core value,
Mm.
right? That we care for our customers. We need to have a clear like mission and intention, and everyone needs to know that, understand that, right? A vision for what we want our customers to experience with us. And so empathy must be woven into that. Empathy also must be operationalized, right? So it has to be more than words. And so what do policies say that allow for empathy, right? How do we
Mm.
train people in the call center to speak and engage with customers that imparts empathy? It also shows a level of leadership, right? Because people mirror their leaders. And so how do you have leaders themselves who are empathetic so that their teams feel like they can take the extra time to ask that question, ask that follow-up question? There's so many tools and methods that help to
Mm.
drive empathy, right? There's things like empathy simulations where you can take a day and we've done that as well at Dominion and show a day in the life of a customer, helping to actively build empathy. And so empathy
Wow.
can be beyond words, right? It actually can be taught, it can be modeled, it can be operationalized. And as a public service company, it's something that's very important for us to keep as part of not just as a word, but as a how we are going through this moment as our customers navigate certain challenges.
Yeah. Wow, that was so great that you said that because I don't think I've ever heard that in this in the energy I would just say in the utility energy, and I'm not calling it out. It's just that it feels like it's embedded is what I'm hearing. It's not just a word on a board, right? But it's really something that you work through and into every day with your customers.
We really truly do. And there's a great team across all different functions and organizations. I think, I know one of the things I've observed in this moment is the power of a company with strong values, particularly in moments like this, because
Mm.
it's really where when the heat's up, it's really where we see what's inside, and so operationalizing empathy is a lot easier when the values are aligned with that. And so it's not just from me, it's from a range of people, all of the things I've shared and more to drive customer empathy so that the things we design, the way we write the website, the way we write the copy, the way we
Yes.
engage, all of those things should come from data and empathy.
I love that.
Yeah.
Operationalizing empathy. I might have to do a whole show on that. I'll fight you back on to talk about that. Just that alone is
Yes.
fantastic. Which brings me to the next question, which I think you've already answered on a lot of levels, is what would credible responses, right,
Yeah.
actually look like? Not just in programs, and utilities are so good at that. There's lots of programs for low income, moderate income folks. But also how it shows up every day. And here, I mean, empathy in the workplace, right? Operationalize empathy. That's a big one, right? Anything else you'd like to add to that?
The word credibility it's akin to trust, right? If I find you credible, there's a few things that I'm tracking in my mind, in my subconscious. One is what you say you'll do.
Okay.
Two is you have a track record of keeping your word. Three is even if you've demonstrated enough that you have my best interest at heart, that even if I don't necessarily like what you're doing, I
Okay.
can I can trust you. And so what does it look like to be credible? I think even before the moment of a message, the actions, right? The
Mm.
demonstrated actions over time is what really helps to drive credibility. Two, in the moment of the message, how transparent can we be? The thing about messages, what they say, it's not what you say, it's what they hear. And
Yeah.
so not optimizing for the perfect thing to say, but being clear on what you want people to hear, right? And how do you show the evidence of it? Evidence is very, very
Yeah.
important in the topic of
And
credibility.
probably saying it a lot of different ways because people hear in different, right? We have different funnels, and, right? And perspectives and our
Right.
life experience, all of those. So being able to say a point in different ways.
You're spot
Um,
on. Yeah,
right. So I'd like to, I'm super excited to talk about your love as a KPI.
yeah.
So just letting everyone know, you have to go to her LinkedIn page because there's a great video there. You talking about this, and that's what got me when I saw that. I'm like, wow. All right. How do we measure love, right?
Mm,
Especially when we're talking in business, right? And companies and bigger and large companies.
yeah.
So, what does that mean, love as a KPI, and how did it come to be?
Such a great question. I have, as you said, a personal philosophy that I've coined, and it's even awkward for me to say that I've coined it because it's been a lifelong message that I only recently gave voice to. And the whole premise is that just like in our personal relationships, when people experience being loved, meaning when truly love as is the objective, and
Mm,
love, I don't mean the sentiment, I don't mean the feelings on hugs, I don't mean high fives. I mean,
right.
love is the word that captures the desire for the greatest good for another person. And if my goal is the desire for the greatest good of Carolyn, if that's my goal, even sometimes that personal sacrifice to myself,
Yeah.
Carolyn will likely be aligned with the actions to drive my other goals. Meaning, if I demonstrate over
Mm,
and over again that I'm for you, you're more likely to buy from me, recommend me, advocate for me, vote for whatever those levers of business value are. But it's also done in a way that leaves you better,
yes.
and so you're not a transaction, you're not the collateral damage of the way businesses is done. And that has come through personal observation from my very first job, which I write about and I share about. And probably even before that job, seeing the connection between how people are left and the business outcomes. And so I talk about love and I describe it in 5 different indicators. And I say, hey, when these indicators are present, you can guarantee that your stakeholders, whether they're customers, employees, they'll do more of what you quote unquote want, but not as a transaction, as a natural response to being loved.
Yeah. Wow. You're writing a book on this, right?
I put my first book out on this in October, so I've at least put that work
Okay.
out. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. I am definitely going to check that out.
Okay.
Um, so, whew, all right. So, when a customer opens a bill, okay, we're just going to get practical here, right? When a customer opens a bill that they can't afford,
Yeah.
right? And they might feel frightened or scared. We had in this series, our second show, we had real people talking about what's up for them right now. So it's real. Um, what does empathy look like, right? As an operational decision,
Yeah.
not just a value on the wall.
It's a great question because this is something that we're constantly looking at, and not just now, have consistently been looking at. What does empathy look like? There's a few things. I would say one, how easy is it for customers to get the help they need? In fact, even before
Mm,
that, how easy is it for customers to know where to go to get the help they need? And when
yep.
they know where to go, how easy is it for them to access it? Do we put, people to run through hoops? Do we make it complicated? Can they read and understand easily? Does it take them going from place to place? All of those things is empathy. How do we make it easy for people to know what options they have so that they're empowered to choose and say, hey, this is the payment plan that's right for me versus that. You're right. So how easy are your channels, whether it's calling? Is there a number? Is there
Yeah.
someone that a
Is
person
it
that
in
will
English and in other languages that might be relevant,
exactly
right?
the
Spanish,
option? That's exactly right.
Spanish.
And Russian
Okay.
and all the languages. So you have those services available where anyone can call and get the help they need and get things translated. Are people speaking to people with respect and dignity, knowing that it's a tough call sometimes for them to have, right? Do customers feel like you are with them even
Yeah.
with a high bill or with a bill that they can't afford to pay? And so this is where it gets tactical, is right. One of my backgrounds is in experience design. It's how you design the experience,
Ah,
and because that's how you do it at scale, right? It's not about having one superstar call center agent that everyone wants to speak to. It's about having this thing just so standard that,
mm,
it's easy, few clicks, easy to understand, empathetic language, proactive follow-ups. Even before they got that high bill, had you been nudging and saying, hey, here's where things are? Do you have tools to manage your usage? Technology plays a role. And so it's so, I think, connecting these sort of human outcomes to tactical things gives those tactical things purpose, right? And the purpose should be people feeling seen, heard, understood, and supported, and able to keep their power on in our context, in our case.
wow. I have to say, Dominion is very fortunate to have you leading the way on
I'm
this.
very
I mean, you said it's a feeling too, right? Because I'm feeling it right now. What you just said, it's authentic,
mm,
it's transparent,
yeah.
it's for the customer. It's seeing them on the high, you just said on the highest level, right, of that kind of service. So right on. I just needed to say that. And this brings me to the next question, which
Yeah.
I found fascinating about what you all did at Dominion. You put your contact center agents live,
Mm.
right, on the news with real customers calling in. Talk about transparency, right? What does it take to prepare people, right, those agents to hold that space?
Mm.
And what have you learned from those moments?
Such a great question. So you're very kind in your words. I will say 100% a team effort, not just saying it to be nice, but I'm part of such a wonderful team of Dominion people in all departments, all groups. And so even that, right? Even the time where, and it's, it's public, where we had agents on the news taking calls, that came in partnership with our wonderful comms team. And why, and it comes back to empathy. What's the purpose of that? We want our customers to see us. We're here. We know that it's tough. We know that this, we had the coldest winter in decades, I think since the 40s, at least in Virginia
Wow.
this year.
Okay.
And what your home has to do to stay warm with that
Mm.
temperature outside is very different from what your home may have had to do to stay warm last year. And there's so many, I mean, this industry, Carolyn, it's very tough to sort of understand why is my bill so high? And
Yeah.
so we want our customers, and so partnering with media outlets, we want our customers to know that we're here. And so I love that you asked about what does it take to prepare the team to create that space. They do this day in, day out.
Uh,
And it would only work if that team, right? So much of, and this is like a broader leadership principle I believe in. It's what you need on game day. You've been building on season practice day in,
uh-huh.
day out, right? And so our team members, our colleagues who are taking those calls, are used to this. It may not be that they're sitting on it being broadcast day in, day out, but the empathy, the understanding, the patience, the being there, right, to sort of be the voice of the customer in many moments. They've been doing this even before this was something that was sort of broadcast. And so we are here and willing to continue to do
Mm.
that. And more than anything, continue to pour back into our colleagues because we also know that's tough. It's a tough role to be in.
Right. And this is a time where the rubber meets the road on this,
Yeah,
because we live in, with the energy transitions, all that's shifting right now in the energy world. This is it, right?
yeah,
And you had some practice ahead of time, right, for cultivating this.
exactly.
So let's just widen that. There's one thing about your team, which is about customer experience, and now there's all the employees, right?
Mm,
Let's talk about the role of employees and
mm,
building trust, because
yeah.
people trust their friend at a company, but they may not trust that company, right? But
Sure.
it's their friend at the company that makes the difference. So how do you make that happen at scale at
Uh,
Dominion?
that's such a great question. I'm 5.5 years into the utility industry. I came from most recently financial services and other industries prior to that. This is the first industry where nearly every employee is also a customer. And you,
Right.
by virtue of you just working there, you could be working in HR, IT, you could be working in the fleet. As long as someone knows you work for Dominion Energy, you are the one they're asking in the neighborhood. You're the one they're asking at church. You're the one they're asking in you like, what's going on with my bill? The number
Right. They pull you aside like the doctor's like, I have my arm hurts, and you're like, what's up with my
literally.
bill?
Literally, so we're all as one sort of team, and this is true, I'm sure, in every utility. We are the voice, we're the face, and we're trusted voice and face because, like, I live in your townhouse complex. My kids go to school with your kids, and so how do you do that at scale? It's a precise effort of communication. It's arming. I think you said it earlier. It's multiple channels of like arming people with like, here's some things you should know because based on your department, you may not be as aware, particularly in a
That's
large
true.
company like I'm part of, like you may not be as aware of what efforts and tools and resources are available. And so for us, it's a structured communication effort of like having employees aware, having their leaders know what to say and where to point people to, make sure that it's in whether it's an all employee meeting or department meeting or on the sort of intranet. Lunch and learns, there's one I think next week. So like it's consistently arming our colleagues with, here's what's going on. If you're asked, which you likely will be, right? Here's some context to provide your friends and your family. it's the, the same way, and I'll sort of wrap here, the same way it's rare to have in companies every employee being the go-to person and being the,
Mm.
in the community. It could really be a very powerful avenue for customers, for companies to build trust, particularly utility companies.
Okay. All right. So coming back to your framework, right? One of the indicators of the five indicators is grace.
Mm.
Okay. So grace, right? How does that look like inside of a regulated utility with rate structures and collection policies? I mean, where do you actually have room to move and into the idea of grace, right?
Yeah, I love that you asked that. So obviously that it's a personal philosophy, but I do think that there's not a big, you know, disconnect, I think, between that personal perspective and philosophy and sort of how I think a company like Dominion operates. Even love as a general topic, Carolyn, is not a passive thing. I think one of the things I'm usually helping people understand is when I say love as a KPI, I don't mean just whatever you want, man. Just, yeah, I love you. So you can do whatever you want. You can, you don't have to go to school. You don't have to
Right.
loving. If you think about like what is loving, I think particularly when I speak to people, particularly parents, they understand that like it requires, so bringing back to your question, the presence of policies, the presence of guidelines, things that make it fair and equitable for everyone, right? Particularly given the industry that we're in, those don't mean the absence of grace. I think where grace comes in is A, to what degree do you actually understand the diverse, varying needs of people beyond what is covered?
Uh-huh.
Right. And so like truly like love can be system operationalized as well because it's data driven. Because so to know where you can give grace sustainably is important, right? And grace means that's you deliver grace literally through like payment plans. You deliver grace through programs. You give grace through tools, knowing that not everyone, right? The bills due, if your bills due March 1st, you will likely pay your bill March 1st, but not everyone can. And so you have all these tools and instruments to help people who can't get to March 1st. You help them get on PIP. We have something called PIP, which is, I know some states have a PIP program. So in Virginia, we have PIP. We have different payment plan options. You have LIHEAP dollars. Those are the instruments of
Right.
grace where the rule is this is the day the bill is due. This is what you must do. For people who need flexibility, these are the instruments that are available, but you do them transparently and consistently.
Mm.
Also loving, right? And so the notion of an organization actually being a conduit of love does not mean there's lawlessness. I, in fact, actually think that harms people long term. But you're creating avenues and tools that allow people to receive the help that they need, but in a way that's transparent and fair and equitable.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Grace in the workplace. Love that. All right, so I'm going to talk about data centers. Your favorite topic. Everybody's favorite topic today. So Virginia, right, is really the data center capital of the world. And with all the media attention that we're getting right now, with I would say especially around data centers, hyperscalers, how do you care for the community in these times, in these very sensitive times? Is it
Yeah.
different or is it really more of the same with what we're talking about today?
I think that's a wonderful question. I think how you care for the community it's not, a data center customer is a customer. And I understand that it's a very, very, sensitive term and topic. But in terms of the things that we do, and I'm speaking from a Dominion perspective specifically for the communities day in, day out, those things don't change, right? A customer who is struggling and needs some support or a time extension, that has nothing really to do with the data center. And so our focus is, hey, for this customer, do we have the resources available to them? Do they know that they have the resources available to care? So care is very personalized and it's
Hmm.
down to sort of who needs that care. What does that care look like? And that's what the teams are. It's what our teams are focused on. In the context of data centers, also helping customers understand, right? Because there is a lot of misinformation out there, like that. If people are thinking, "Hey, my bill is because of this," it's like, no, it's not. That's not
Yeah.
driving your bill, right? So care also means informing people, making sure people are informed, but down to that, because our industry is down to that account level, to that meter, your home. I'm in my home currently, right? Down to that level, what care do I need today? That is pretty disconnected from a general narrative around data centers. And so the care is more focused. We continue to find different ways and avenues to meet our customers. We're in the
Hmm.
communities a lot. We are in fairs, we're in churches, we're everywhere our customers need to be. We're continue looking at focus groups and programs and just ways to engage customers to make sure that as many customers as possible get that support. So it's more localized than anything else.
Yeah. Well, it occurs to me that you've established a baseline.
Yeah.
Everything we talked about today, right? And it didn't just start here. It started years ago, perhaps, and building
Yeah.
a team that knows how to be with a customer, right?
Yeah.
Through empathy, maybe even grace, right? All those things that to talk about so that they can actually be authentic and be able to speak to that customer for their worries at that time.
You've perfectly summed it up. I have
Right.
nothing.
Okay. So you've said that back to AI, right? And you've said that AI reshapes the grid and customer service and human dimension, the human dimension of how utilities show up will matter more in
Yeah.
our machine age, right? Learning age, robot age, right? So what does love-led communication
Yeah.
and let's say leadership look like when so much interaction today is starting to be automated? That's the
I,
human side, right, to all of
yeah.
this.
I really I appreciate this question more and more because what is clear to me is, and I'm not, personally, I'm not a fast mover in terms of AI. I myself have been learning and taking it in, but I think what's increasingly clear is that their AI will normalize a lot of things and create a different standard for things. Where any organization in whatever the industry is will stand out is how human the human elements are. So that does a few different things, right? One is how your people are enabled and equipped to work with AI, right? So AI is an enabler of roles and people being able, their skill sets evolving and then being able to work with AI, but them knowing when to be human and what that means. And so love-led leadership is a way of leading that where these five indicators of love, which we've talked about a few. So it's empathy, grace, truth, sacrifice, and generosity. Says I missed one in the middle, where those become so operationalized because
Mm,
I've done a lot of research on this, particularly as I was writing. Each one of those things, as weighty as they may seem, when they are operationalized, and there are many companies who do that, they may not call it love, but it shows up in different interactions. But
yeah,
when they're in operation, the people that are receiving those things can differentiate themselves. They want you. They want to do what they want. They're supporters of you. You see, it's also true in our personal lives, right, Carolyn? If there are people who love you because you love them,
yeah,
and those people will go to bat for you. Those people will, if someone's like, Carolyn said that, they're like, no, she didn't, right? That's the same thing about brands that people really, really trust. If you
right.
ask, it's not because of automation that they received. It's because something the brand does or has done meets them at this really visceral human level. And so love-led leadership are leaders, A, who themselves are becoming more loving and who are taking these actual not these are not just indicators of love. I see them as design principles, and they're weaving it into this experiences, to how products are designed, to the words that they use, so that by default people are experiencing love through them and through their organization. And what they're getting are people who feel seen, heard, and understood, and who become, because there's one response to love that's consistent. When a person experiences being loved, even if it takes time, they respond to the source of that love with devotion. They're like,
Uh,
where you want, send me wherever you want. There's a reason people follow
right.
leaders all over the place, right? That's the response of love. And that's the human wiring that I don't think will go away anytime soon. And so for companies in this AI age, I would encourage them to invest in leaders that are more loving and then weaving in these elements of love into their experiences through straight up experience design methods.
Yeah, and training, right?
And training.
Right,
That's right.
training. I mean, can everybody, when you put a team together, like, can people be taught empathy, right? Or is it something that's inside of them that maybe can be expanded upon?
Such a great question. I believe people can be taught. I believe that
Oh,
it can
good.
be. I believe everything is already in. Well, I can't say every single person because that would be, being hyperbolic. 'Cause I don't know. There's 8 billion people, but I would say the vast majority of people, 99%, right? The vast majority of people have the capacity to be loving. Love is not a personality type. It's not for
Mm.
people who are Myers-Briggs F versus, or an insights color yellow. It's not that. How love is expressed through different people is different through different people, and that's good. What usually blocks people from actually leaning into this, right, is one, there's a what I call an imaginary firewall between who we think we need to be in corporate settings
Oh, I love
and
that.
who we are. And so a lot of that filter then helps us, makes us stifle these parts of us, but they're there. Typically, if I really want to break through to someone, I meet them at their I try to get them to connect with them at their either before they were 13 or something to do with their family, or even if it's not about like their background and childhood, what leader saw you more than you saw yourself? What person
Mm.
encouraged, like where in your story, because everyone has it, did someone's belief in you or confidence in you or grace towards you, or you did something awful, but they didn't charge you for it, they didn't hold it over your head. Where did that happen for you? And imagine if we could do that at scale for other people.
Yeah.
Imagine how clearly differently they would see our company. Everyone has a personal story, and I think that's
And
where it
that could
starts.
be a breakthrough when that happens, right? A collective breakthrough.
Right.
So finding, so we all have it in us, right? Is what I heard you say, right?
We,
And it
yeah.
can all be cultivated, and expanded. So, okay. Wow. So in closing, right? I'm going to ask you if you could ask, every utility leader today in this country to make one concrete shift
Mm,
in how they lead through this affordability moment,
mm.
what would that be?
That's a great question. I first of all would smile and applaud every utility leader navigating this moment, knowing that it's we're in public service, as you very well know. One shift. It's going to sound very cliche, but then I'll say it and then I'll expand on it. It is a personal, individual shift towards becoming themselves a more loving person. And I know someone might say, I'm already a loving person, then there's always more. And
Yeah,
the reason I
right.
say that is the leadership is an inside out job. It's never outside in. It's not about the activities. It's about who we as leaders, as individual human beings, aside our titles and our remits, are becoming. And so, how can you commit to becoming more empathetic? What is then practically like? Do you
Mm.
take a day, 1 month, and just walk through a neighborhood of where customers, you don't have like, what can you do to connect? There's a line from a musical called Evita that I like to quote. And the line says, for someone on top of the world, the view is not exactly clear, right? And so
Um,
what step can you take to yourself immerse in the world of your customer? What call can you listen to? You may be a busy leader who doesn't listen to calls as often anymore, right? What calls can you listen to? The more you yourself are shifting and evolving to being a more loving person, the more ideas on things that you can do will naturally generate. That's where I was going with all of that.
wow. Wow. Okay. How can people get in touch with you? I want to learn more about your philosophy and work, right?
Yeah, well, I am a proud part of the Dominion Energy team, and so dominionenergy.com has all the resources and a lot of the things I talked about. I myself am on LinkedIn with my name. If you type in Utibe Bassey and the word love, there should only be one of us.
Okay.
So anything on Loves the KPI, as Carolyn shared, will be found there. But I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to share, Carolyn. I appreciate what you're doing through this platform.
Thank you. So I am so inspired by this conversation. Thank you so much for coming on this series. It's added a whole other level,
Hmm.
and I just feel really honored that you did. So We've been circling this question on the series. What does credible responses actually look like? And we've heard so many of them today, really heartfelt, deep responses. And what strikes me about this conversation today is that she wasn't talking about a communication strategy or a plan, that plan that going forward, but she's describing about a way of being, right? A way of being inside of an organization. And what Utibe brings is a framework for making human commitment, right, measurable. It actually be operationalized and measurable, not just a value on the wall or a standard, right, to be held to. That's the work, right? If this series shows us anything, it's that utilities that are willing to do that work. I mean, this has been happening a long time at Dominion, right? And cultivating their leaders that way. They're the ones that will earn something that no rate case can grant them. And that's trust. We need that so much right now in this moment. So thank you so much, Utibe, again, for being on the show with us. And thank you for joining us on Just Power. If this conversation moved you, inspired you like it did me, subscribe to the series, right? You can catch us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you love your podcasts, and share it. Share it with someone in the industry. Maybe it's your utility, right? You can share it with, or maybe it's a policymaker, or maybe it's just a neighbor in need, right? Share this because there's a lot to think about in this episode today. Because at the end of the day, I always say this, we are all in this together. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to Just Power wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really loved it, leave us a review and tell everyone you know about our podcast. It's going to take all of us to create a clean energy future that leaves no one behind.